They mocked her. They ignored her. They called her just a cleaner. But one act of kindness, one selfless decision changed her life forever. Before we continue, if you love emotional African stories like this, please tap the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow. Now let's begin. This is the story of Zainab, a 27-year-old Nigerian hospital cleaner who helped an old, sick man without knowing he was one of the richest men in Africa. What happened next will touch your heart. Zainab woke up every morning at exactly 4:30 a.m., long before the city of Lagos found its voice. Not because she loved mornings, not because life was kind to her, but because poverty never slept. Her alarm was not a phone. It was the sound of generators coughing to life in the neighborhood, the distant shout of a night bus conductor, and the quiet fear that if she overslept, she could lose the only job keeping her alive. Zainab was 27 years old, but life had already aged her beyond her years. She lived alone in a single-room apartment in Ageje, one of those crowded Lagos neighborhoods where houses stood too close to each other, as if they were afraid to fall alone. The walls of her room were cracked, the paint peeling like old scars. When it rained, water found its way inside through the roof, dripping onto the floor she cleaned every night before sleeping. Her mattress was thin and uneven. Her fan worked only when it wanted to, and the small mirror by her door reflected a young woman whose eyes had learned to hide pain too early. Zainab's life did not begin this way. She was born into a simple but loving home in northern Nigeria. Her father was a tailor. Her mother sold food by the roadside. They didn't have much, but they had laughter. They had prayer. They had hope. Until one evening changed everything. A drunk driver, a speeding truck, a phone call she would never forget. By the time Zainab turned 19, both her parents were gone. She moved in with an uncle who promised to take care of her. But promises sound different when money is involved. Within a year, the insults began, the complaints, the reminder that she was another mouth to feed. One morning, he told her plainly, "Zainab, Lagos is full of opportunities. Go and hustle." No money, no connections, no safety net. Just a bus ticket and silence. That was how Zainab arrived in Lagos, alone. She tried selling sachet water. She tried house help jobs. She tried working in a restaurant where customers thought touching her was part of the menu. Eventually, she found work as a cleaner in a private hospital in Ikeja. The pay was small, 5,000 naira each day, but it was steady. And in Lagos, steady meant survival. Every morning, Zainab tied her headscarf neatly, wore her faded uniform and boarded 2 buses to work. She watched people in suits scroll through their phones, people with destinations, people with choices. She had none. At the hospital, Zainab cleaned what others avoided. She cleaned toilets stained with sickness, floors soaked with blood, bins overflowing with pain and discarded hope. She mopped wards where people cried silently at night. She wiped walls that had heard prayers whispered in fear. Doctors passed her without seeing her. Nurses backed orders without greeting. "Cleaner, hurry up. Why is this place still dirty? Don't touch that equipment." Some patients treated her like she was invisible. Others treated her like she was less than human. Once, a woman snapped her fingers at Zainab like she was calling a dog. Zainab said nothing. She learned early that silence paid better than arguments. During her short breaks, she sat alone behind the building, eating cold rice from a plastic container. She watched ambulances arrive with sirens screaming, watched families run in with fear in their eyes, watched people pray when medicine was no longer enough. Sometimes she wondered if God could see her. At 27, Zainab had never been in love, never been taken out on a proper date, never been asked, "How was your day?" by someone who truly cared. She didn't dream of luxury. Her dreams were simple: a room with no leaks, a job where people said thank you, a life where kindness did not feel like a weakness. At night, when she returned home exhausted, she knelt by her bed and prayed softly, "God, I don't ask for riches. I don't ask for fame. Just help me survive without losing my heart." She feared one thing more than poverty: becoming hard, becoming the kind of person who no longer felt compassion because life had beaten it out of her. So even when the world was cruel, Zainab chose gentleness. Even when people mocked her, she chose patience. Even when no one noticed her, she chose kindness. She did not know that one ordinary morning, one hospital room, one lonely old man would turn her quiet life into a story the whole nation would one day talk about. And as Zainab mopped the hospital floor that Tuesday morning, unaware of what fate was arranging, she had no idea that destiny had already checked into the ward. That Tuesday morning began like every other morning in the hospital. The smell of disinfectant hung heavily in the air. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed down long corridors. Monitors beeped steadily, reminding everyone that life and death were never far apart. Zainab pushed her cleaning trolley slowly, her hands already aching from hours of work. She had just finished cleaning the emergency ward when the head nurse called her name sharply. "Zainab." She stopped immediately. "There is a new patient in private ward 7. Go and clean the room properly. Be careful. Don't touch anything you are not asked to touch." Zainab nodded quietly. Private wards were different. They were reserved for people who could afford comfort even in sickness. The floors were shinier. The beds were softer. The air conditioners worked without complaint. And the patients there were usually surrounded by visitors, flowers, and whispers of importance. Zainab pushed the trolley slowly, down the quieter hallway leading to the private section. The noise of the main hospital faded behind her. Everything here felt slower, heavier. As she approached Ward 7, she noticed something unusual. 2 men stood outside the door. They were not hospital staff. They wore dark suits, their faces serious, their posture alert. One of them spoke quietly into a phone, his eyes scanning the hallway like someone trained to watch for danger. Zainab felt a slight unease. She cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me, I'm here to clean the room." The men looked at her, really looked at her, from her worn shoes to her faded uniform. Then one of them nodded and stepped aside without a word. Zainab entered the room, and immediately she felt it, the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, aching silence. The room was large and well lit. Medical equipment surrounded the bed. Machines hummed softly. Curtains fluttered slightly from the air conditioner. On the bed lay an old man. He looked frail. His skin was pale against the white sheets. His chest rose and fell slowly, as if every breath required effort. But what struck Zainab most was not his illness. It was his face. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, empty, distant, as if his body was here but his mind was somewhere far away. No visitors sat by his side. No flowers rested on the table. No family voices filled the room. Just him, alone. Zainab began cleaning quietly, careful not to disturb him. She wiped the floor gently, adjusted the trash bin, cleaned the small table beside the bed. She moved softly like someone afraid of breaking something fragile. As she worked, she noticed his hands. They trembled slightly. She noticed the way his lips pressed together as if he was holding back words or emotions he had no strength to release. Suddenly, she heard a soft sound, a sniff. Zainab froze. She looked up slowly. The old man was crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent tears rolling down the side of his face, disappearing into the pillow. Zainab hesitated. She was not allowed to talk to patients unnecessarily. Cleaners were expected to clean and leave, nothing more. But something in her chest tightened painfully. She remembered the nights she cried alone in her room, the times she wished someone would notice her pain. Her hands trembled as she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, are you okay?" The old man turned his head slowly. His eyes met hers. They were tired eyes, eyes that had seen too much life, eyes that had carried both victories and losses. For a moment, he said nothing. "You're not alone, sir," she said gently. "I'm here." The old man looked at her, surprised. People usually avoided him. Even the nurses rushed in and out, focused on charts and machines. But here was this young woman, this cleaner, choosing to sit with him. "What is your name?" he asked. "Zainab." "And you?" He paused. For a brief second, something flickered across his face. Hesitation, calculation, then decision. "You can call me Musa." Just Musa. No title, no surname. Zainab nodded. "Okay, Baba Musa." That simple name seemed to soften him. From that day, something changed. Whenever Zainab was assigned to the private ward, she made sure to check on Baba Musa. She adjusted his blanket when he shivered. She helped feed him when his hands were too weak to hold a spoon. Sometimes she talked about Lagos traffic, about the price of food, about how people rush through life without seeing each other. Sometimes she stayed silent, just sitting there, keeping him company. Baba Musa listened, and for the first time in a long time, he felt human. He never spoke about his family, never spoke about his past, never spoke about money. When nurses addressed him with forced politeness, he remained quiet. When the men in suits came briefly to check on him, he asked them to leave quickly. It was as if he wanted this small hospital room to be a place where he was just a man, not a name. Zainab noticed how he watched people, not with pride, but with sadness. One evening, she asked softly, "Do you have children, sir?" Baba Musa closed his eyes. "No," he said, after a long pause, "not anymore." Zainab didn't ask further. She understood grief well enough to know when not to dig. Outside the room, hospital staff whispered, "That old man must be very rich. Look at the security. Why is that cleaner always inside there?" Some laughed. Maybe she thinks she will change her life. Zainab heard them, but she ignored them. She wasn't thinking of money. She wasn't thinking of a reward. She was thinking of a lonely old man who deserved to feel seen. What Zainab did not know was that Baba Musa was watching her too. Watching her kindness, watching her patience, watching the way she cared without asking for anything. And deep inside, a question began to form in his heart. If I had nothing, would anyone still treat me like this? As machines beeped softly in Private Ward 7, two strangers from opposite ends of life unknowingly stepped into each other's destiny. Zainab did not know it yet, but the old man lying quietly in Private Ward 7 carried a lifetime of stories within him. To the hospital staff, he was just another wealthy patient. To Zainab, he was simply Baba Musa, a fragile old man with tired eyes and a gentle voice. But behind that weakness was a man who had once moved nations with his decisions. Baba Musa's real name was Alhaji Musa Danjuma. For over 40 years, his name had echoed in boardrooms across Nigeria and beyond. He was one of the pioneers of oil and gas logistics, one of the earliest Nigerians to build indigenous companies that serviced multinational oil firms in the Niger Delta. When others were afraid to invest, he took risks. Before oil, there was construction. In the late 1970s, young Musa Danjuma arrived in Lagos with nothing but a small leather bag and stubborn determination. He worked as a site supervisor by day and slept in unfinished buildings by night. He learned how to mix cement with his hands, how to read structural drawings, how to negotiate contracts with men who looked down on him. He failed many times. Contracts were cancelled, partners cheated him, banks rejected his loan applications. But he kept going. By the time Nigeria entered its oil boom, Musa was ready. He built a logistics company that transported equipment to offshore rigs. Later, he expanded into import-export, bringing in heavy machinery and exporting agricultural products. When people laughed at his ambition, he quietly reinvested every profit. Eventually, he entered real estate. He bought land when others ignored it, built estates when others doubted him. Decades later, those same lands became gold mines. Money came, power followed, influence grew. But none of it mattered without her, his wife. Her name was Amina. Amina was with him long before success found him. She sold her jewelry to help him raise capital. She prayed when deals failed. She encouraged him when the world seemed determined to break him. When Musa slept in unfinished buildings, Amina slept there too. They dreamed together. They struggled together. They built together. When wealth finally came, he wanted to enjoy it with her. But life had other plans. Amina fell ill suddenly. It was nothing serious at first, just fatigue, then pain. But by the time doctors diagnosed it, it was already late. She died quietly in a hospital bed, and the man who had faced banks, governments, and multinational corporations could not face that loss. They had no surviving children. After her burial, Musa locked himself inside work. Meetings replaced emotions, money replaced conversations, buildings replaced companionship. His mansion felt empty. His wealth felt useless. People surrounded him, but no one truly touched his heart. Everyone wanted something from him: investments, contracts, donations. No one asked him how he was coping. As years passed, Musa became a widower wrapped in wealth. He traveled constantly, stayed in luxury hotels, attended high-profile events, but every night he returned to silence. As age caught up with him, so did regret. And when illness finally struck, sudden, aggressive, and frightening, he made a decision. He ordered his aides to not announce his identity at the hospital. No press, no visitors, no attention. For the first time in decades, he wanted to know, who would care for me if my money meant nothing? That was when he met Zainab. As he lay in bed, weak and vulnerable, he watched her. He watched the way she entered the room quietly, as if not to disturb his pain. He watched how she spoke to him with respect, not fear. How she never once asked who he was or why he was guarded. He noticed the small things: how she offered water without being asked, how she adjusted his pillow before cleaning, how she prayed silently when she thought no one was watching. One afternoon, while Zainab cleaned the window, Musa finally spoke. "Zainab, do you know how many people fear me?" She turned, confused. "Fear you, sir?" He smiled faintly. "People respect power, not people." Zainab shook her head gently. "I don't see power, Baba. I see a human being." Those words stayed with him long after she left the room. For the first time since Amina's death, Musa felt something stir inside him. Not desire, not ambition, but connection. He saw in Zainab what money could never buy: genuine compassion. He saw a woman who had nothing to gain from him, yet gave everything she could. That realization broke him. One night, as rain poured outside the hospital windows, Musa whispered into the darkness, "Amina, if you can see me, God did not leave me alone after all." And as Zainab sat quietly by his bedside that night, unaware of the riches behind the man she called Baba Musa, fate smiled. Because sometimes the richest man in the room is the one who finally learns how to love again. As days turned into weeks, Private Ward 7 became a place of quiet transformation. To everyone else in the hospital, it was just another room occupied by an old, wealthy patient.
But to Zainab and Baba Musa, it became something deeper. A small world where money no longer mattered and humanity took center stage. Baba Musa's condition remained unstable. Some days he was strong enough to sit upright and talk. On other days, even lifting his head seemed impossible. Machines beeped constantly, reminding everyone how fragile life truly was. Zainab noticed the changes immediately. She noticed when his breathing became shallow. She noticed when his hands shook more than usual. She noticed when his eyes lost their light. And without being asked, she stayed. Sometimes, after finishing her assigned duties, Zainab returned quietly to his room. She was not paid for this. She was not praised for it. She simply did it because she could not bear the thought of him being alone. One afternoon, she arrived to find Baba Musa coughing violently. The nurse checked his vitals and shook her head. "She's deteriorating," she said flatly. "We're doing all we can." Zainab stood frozen at the door, fear gripping her chest. That night, the hospital was usually quiet. Rain fell steadily outside the windows, tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. Zainab sat by Baba Musa's bed long after her shift had ended. She should have gone home, but something in her spirit refused to leave. Baba Musa opened his eyes slowly. "Why are you still here?" he asked weakly. Zainab smiled softly. "Because nights are lonely, and no one should be lonely when they are fighting for their life." He looked at her for a long time. "You remind me of my wife," he whispered.
The next morning, hospital staff began to notice. That cleaner is always with that old man. Is she trying to impress him? Maybe she thinks he will leave her money. Their words were sharp. One nurse laughed openly. "These village girls think kindness is a shortcut to wealth." Zainab heard everything. She cried quietly in the bathroom, wiping her tears before returning to work. She did not defend herself. She did not explain. Because how do you explain a heart that refuses to harden? One evening, Baba Musa began shivering uncontrollably. The nurse searched for an extra blanket but found none. "There are no spares," she said impatiently. "We'll manage." Zainab looked at Baba Musa's frail body, curled slightly in discomfort. Without thinking, she removed her only sweater, the one she wore every morning to protect herself from the early cold, and gently placed it over him. "This will help," she said softly. That night, Zainab walked home shivering under the rain. She caught a cold 2 days later but still came to work, because kindness does not calculate cost. As Baba Musa's health worsened, doctors began speaking in low tones outside the room. Zainab overheard words she feared. "At his age, organ failure. We should prepare." Her legs felt weak. That night, she knelt beside her bed and prayed like she had never prayed before. "God, please, I don't know why you brought him into my life, but please don't let him die alone." The following evening, alarm suddenly rang from Private Ward 7. Nurses rushed in, doctors followed. Zainab stood frozen in the hallway, her hands trembling, tears streaming freely. She wasn't allowed inside. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, a doctor stepped out. "He is critical," the doctor said. "We don't know if he'll make it through the night." Zainab slid down the wall and wept. She did not weep because he was rich. She wept because she had grown to love him as a human being. Late that night, Baba Musa regained consciousness briefly. Zainab was allowed in. She held his hand, feeling how cold it was. Baba Musa recovered faster than anyone expected, but the hospital never stopped feeling like a place where goodbyes could happen at any moment. After that critical night, his breathing became steadier, his eyes brighter, and his voice stronger. Nurses began to smile more when they walked into his room. Doctors stopped whispering outside the door. The machine still beeped, but not with the same urgency. And Zainab finally allowed herself to hope. One morning, Zainab entered Private Ward 7 with her mop and disinfectant, humming softly as she pushed her trolley. She expected to find Baba Musa resting. Maybe he would ask her for water again. Maybe he would joke about how she talked too much. But when she opened the door, the room felt wrong, too quiet. The bed was neatly made, no old man, no machines beeping,
No weak breathing, just emptiness. Zainab stood there, confused, her heart suddenly pounding. She turned slowly, scanning the room like maybe Baba Musa had gone to the restroom or for a test. Then she saw it. His cup was gone, his slippers were gone, even the small bag of personal items that had sat beside the bed was missing. Baba Musa had left. Zainab rushed out into the hallway and approached the nurse. "Excuse me, please, where is Baba Musa from Ward 7? The nurse barely looked up. "He was discharged this morning." Zainab blinked rapidly. "Discharged? But he didn't tell me." The nurse shrugged. "Not everyone has time to announce things, Zainab. Go and do your work." Zainab stood there, frozen, as if someone had poured cold water on her soul. She walked back into the empty room and slowly sat on the chair where she used to sit by his bed. Her throat tightened painfully. She didn't understand why, but it felt like she had lost someone again. She reminded herself, he is not your family, he is not your friend, he is just a patient, but her heart refused to believe that. For the rest of that day, Zainab cleaned like a machine. Her hands moved, but her mind was far away. When her co-workers laughed and gossiped, she didn't join. When someone insulted her, she didn't respond. She only kept hearing Baba Musa's voice in her head. "Thank you." She went home that evening and sat on her bed staring at the wall as rain tapped lightly on her window. She did not cry loudly. She simply felt empty. Days passed, then weeks. Private Ward 7 was occupied by another patient. Life at the hospital returned to its usual cruelty. Zainab returned to cleaning blood-stained floors and hearing "cleaner" thrown at her like a stone. The nurses still mocked her whenever they remembered Baba Musa. "So, your billionaire has gone, Abi? Did he at least drop transport money for you? Next time, find another rich old man to befriend." Zainab swallowed the shame and said nothing, not because she was weak, but because she knew that she had done a good thing and she refused to be ashamed of kindness. But at night, when she was alone, she missed him. Not his money, because she still didn't know who he truly was. She missed the feeling of being seen, being heard, being appreciated. One afternoon, nearly 2 months after Baba Musa left, Zainab returned from work and found something strange outside her compound. A black luxury SUV was parked near the gate, the kind of car she only saw on TV or in rich neighborhoods. 2 men stood beside it, dressed in dark suits, their faces serious, just like the men she had seen outside Private Ward 7. Zainab's stomach twisted. Neighbors gathered at a distance, whispering, "Who are these people? Is that Zainab they are looking for? What did she do?" Zainab approached slowly, fear tightening her chest. One of the men stepped forward. "Are you Zainab?" Her voice trembled. "Yes, I am." The man nodded respectfully. "You have been requested to come with us." Zainab's eyes widened. "Come with you? Why? Is there a problem?" "No, madam, no problem, but you are needed." The word madam alone shocked her. Nobody called her that. Zainab looked around at her neighbors' faces, curious, suspicious, excited. She suddenly felt small and exposed. Her hands shook. "Please, I don't understand." The man opened the back door of the SUV. "You will understand when you arrive." Zainab's heart raced violently. Her mind flashed with terrible thoughts. Kidnap? Police? Accusation? But something in the man's calm tone told her it wasn't danger. Still, she was terrified. She entered the vehicle slowly, her body stiff with fear. The door closed gently behind her, sealing her into a world she never belonged to. As they drove, Lagos blurred outside the tinted windows. Zainab clutched her small handbag tightly, whispering prayers under her breath. After a long drive, the SUV entered a quiet, high-security estate, where the roads were smooth and the houses looked like palaces. Zainab's mouth fell open. Even the air felt expensive. The car finally stopped in front of a massive gate. The gate opened slowly. Inside was a mansion so large it looked unreal. Zainab stepped out of the car, her legs weak. The men led her toward the entrance. Her heart pounded so loudly she felt it in her ears. The door opened, and then she saw him, Baba Musa. But not the Baba Musa she knew. This man stood tall, dressed in a neatly pressed white kaftan. His face was healthier, his posture strong. Behind him were more men in suits, and the atmosphere around him screamed power. Zainab's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Baba Musa," she whispered. He smiled warmly, the same gentle smile from the hospital. "Zainab," he said softly, "you came." Zainab's eyes filled with tears. "Why? Why am I here? You left without saying goodbye." The old man's smile faded a little. He stepped closer.
"I left because I needed to think," he said, "and because I needed to be sure." Zainab shook her head, confused. Sure of what? He took a deep breath. One of the men behind him handed him a document. He ignored it and looked directly into Zainab's eyes. "My name is not Musa." Zainab blinked. "What?" "I am Alhaji Musa Danjuma." The name hit Zainab like thunder. She had heard it before, in news, in business discussions, even in social media posts about billionaires. Her knees buckled slightly. "No, that can't be." He nodded. "It is." Zainab stared at him, trembling. You are," he finished calmly. "One of the men you cleaned for is one of the men whose money runs this country." Zainab's vision blurred. She felt dizzy. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. His eyes softened. "Because I wanted to know something, Zainab. I have spent my whole life surrounded by people who love my money. I wanted to know who would care for me when I looked like nothing." Zainab's tears fell freely. "Baba, I didn't care about your money." He stepped closer. "I know," he said gently. "That is why you are standing here." Zainab covered her mouth with her hand as sobs escaped her. All the insults from the hospital, all the mockery, all the loneliness, suddenly it felt like God had been watching every moment. Baba Musa, Alhaji Musa, reached out and held her hands. "Zainab," he said softly, "you gave me something no one has given me in years." She sniffed. "What?" His voice shook slightly. "You made me feel human again." And in that moment, Zainab realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Her kindness opened a door she never even knew existed, and a new purpose. Zainab stayed in Abuja for days. Days that felt unreal, like she had stepped into someone else's life by mistake. Everything around her was quiet, polished, and expensive. Yet, Baba Musa treated her with the same gentleness he had shown in the hospital. He did not overwhelm her with gifts or money. Instead, he listened to her. He asked about her childhood, her parents, her struggles in Lagos, and her dreams, the ones she had buried so deeply she almost forgot they existed. For the first time in her life, Zainab felt seen not as a cleaner, not as a poor girl, but as a woman whose thoughts mattered. Baba Musa told her about his loneliness after his wife's death, about the long nights in his mansion where money could not silence grief, and about how meeting her had reminded him that life was still worth living. Slowly, affection grew between them, not sudden or reckless, but calm, respectful, and deep. Baba Musa encouraged Zainab to return to school, promising to support her education, but never forcing her to accept anything she was not ready for. When she returned to Lagos, her life changed quietly. Her rent was paid anonymously. She was treated with unexpected respect at work. Yet, Baba Musa kept his distance, allowing her space to choose freely. Months later, he invited her back to Abuja, not with bodyguards and formality, but with humility. Sitting across from her one quiet evening, he spoke honestly. He told her he did not want the rest of his life to be defined by loss, that he wanted companionship built on truth, not pity or obligation. Then he asked her, gently, if she would consider becoming his wife. Zainab cried, not because of wealth or status, but because the man before her had loved her when he thought he was nothing. She said yes. Their wedding shocked the nation. Headlines screamed, social media argued. Some praised her kindness, others questioned her intentions. Zainab ignored it all. On her wedding day, she wore a simple smile and carried her mother's memory in her heart. After marriage, she did not abandon who she was. She built foundations that paid hospital bills for the poor, improved working conditions for cleaners, and created scholarships for girls like her who only needed one chance. Baba Musa watched her with pride, knowing that wealth had finally found purpose through love. And as they walked together into a new chapter of life, one truth stood clear above all others. Kindness, given freely and quietly, has the power to rewrite destiny in ways money never can. This brings us to the end of today's story. If this story touched your heart, please kindly like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing powerful African stories that inspire, heal, and remind us of the power of kindness. Thank you for watching.